Blade. Ready to die.
Blade is set to bring some serious edge back to Marvel movies, just like the original did. While Marvel released a bunch of films before, it wasn't until the 1998 Blade movie that they really hit it big with a live-action adaptation. Wesley Snipes knocked it out of the park as the vampire hunter in this R-rated action horror flick. Fun fact, some people didn't even know it was based on a comic when it first came out. The movie introduced Blade and his sidekick Whistler as they fought against vampires. It also featured Deacon Frost, one of Blade's biggest villains. Just like in the comics, Deacon was the vampire who turned Blade into a half-human, half-vampire hybrid, led a vampire rebellion, and tried to perform an ancient blood ritual. Now, over 25 years later, two-time Oscar winner Mahershala Ali is set to star in the MCU's Blade reboot, though production delays keep pushing it back. But we do know it's going to be R-rated. Marvel's Blade reboot has faced some delays, and Kevin Feige says the most important thing is not to rush it. In an interview with Black Tree TV during his press tour for Deadpool and Wolverine, Feige touched on the film's long development process. Announced back in July 2019, the reboot has had a rocky road, with multiple writers and directors coming and going. Feige emphasized that taking the time to get it right has been crucial for Marvel, especially after 2 years of working to crack the movie. He also teased that the film will be R-rated. When Feige was asked about Blade in relation to Deadpool and Wolverine, the first R-rated film in the MCU, he explained that keeping Deadpool R-rated was key to staying true to his character, and the same applies to Blade. Feige emphasized that after 2 years of working on the movie, the priority has been to not rush things and ensure they're making the right Blade movie. He noted that the previous Blade films were all R-rated and that, like Deadpool, it's essential to stay true to the character's nature. Marvel announced its Blade movie with Mahershala Ali in July 2019. Bassam Tariq was originally set to direct, but left the project in September 2022, just 2 months before filming was supposed to start. Over the years, several screenwriters have been attached to the film, including Watchmen writer Stacey Osei-Kuffour and Michael Starbury. According to a report by Variety last November, the film had gone through at least 5 different writers by then. One source revealed that at one point, the script was reworked into a story led by women, with themes of life lessons. There was also speculation that Marvel was aiming to turn the movie into a supernatural monster team-up, which could be a great move, especially since the film is set to be R-rated. Introducing some monsters into the mix could be a perfect fit. Starting with Dracula, it seems that Werewolf by Night might not have a clear villain, breaking away from the usual MCU formula. Instead, the antagonistic role could be filled by the Monster Hunters, the TVA, or even Man-Thing. But if there's one villain that makes the most sense, it's Dracula. Even if he doesn't appear in Werewolf by Night, he's a huge figure in Marvel, so it's likely he'll show up in the MCU at some point. Dracula will probably make his debut in Blade, though other notable vampires like Deacon Frost, Varney, and his son Zarus could also play a role. As vampires and other monsters become a bigger part of the MCU, it would be great if Dracula didn't just appear once and disappear like many villains, but instead had a lasting presence in the franchise. Another character with strong ties to the MCU is Nina Price, aka Vampire by Night. As the niece of Jack Russell, aka Werewolf by Night, she's got a clear connection to his story and could easily show up in future MCU projects. Nina's backstory is unique. Like her uncle, she and her family were cursed to turn into werewolves at night, but she was also bitten by a vampire, making her a rare hybrid. While she may not be as well known to casual fans as Werewolf by Night, a Vampire by Night Halloween special could be an excellent way to introduce her and explore her character with a fresh perspective. When Nina does make her MCU debut, she could team up with her uncle and other monsters for a second version of the Howling Commandos. Next up is Manphibian. Early Hollywood horror films, like those featuring Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, and the creature from the Black Lagoon, inspired many Marvel characters. Manphibian is one of them, though he's actually an alien out for revenge on the murderer of his mate. he tracks the killer to Earth while raising his numerous children. If the monster hunters from Werewolf by Night manage to survive, Manphibian could be a great next target. He could join forces with Jack Russell, Man-Thing, and Elsa Bloodstone in the Legion of Monsters. Given his interesting backstory, Manphibian would also make an awesome protagonist in his own Halloween special, much like Vampire by Night. Next is Nkantu, the Living Mummy, another monster who could shine in his own Halloween special. Nkantu was an ancient chieftain who was enslaved by an Egyptian pharaoh and later experimented on by an evil sorcerer. The sorcerer mummified him and, in an unexpected twist, granted him immortality, though he was entombed for thousands of years. Nkantu could have a connection to the MCU, especially if Moon Knight returns for a second season and dives deeper into Egyptian mythology and history. Like the other monsters, he could eventually join the Howling Commandos or the Legion of Monsters, adding to the MCU's supernatural lineup. And we can't forget Sasquatch. Unlike some monsters, Sasquatch isn't strictly tied to horror stories. Walter Lankowski tried to replicate the Hulk's transformation through a gamma-ray experiment, but instead of becoming a green giant, he turned into a giant orange, hairy beast resembling Bigfoot. This transformation was the result of powers gifted to him by a great beast, one of the powerful creatures from another dimension with plans to conquer Earth. Sasquatch is also a key member of Alpha Flight, Canada's version of the Avengers, and their arrival in the MCU seems likely. Many members of Alpha Flight are mutants, so it may take some time before they show up, but when they do, Sasquatch and the team could easily get their own Disney Plus series or film in the MCU. Another intriguing character is Fin Fang Foom. Dragons are already part of the MCU thanks to Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and Fin Fang Foom, an alien dragon from the Makluan race, could be the next one to make an appearance. He's part of Iron Man's Rogues Gallery, but in the vast MCU, he'll have to face off against other powerful characters. With the Shang-Chi movie revealing that the Ten Rings act as a beacon, many fans speculated that this could signal the arrival of Fin Fang Foom, as the rings are Makluan in origin in the comics. Whether or not he shows up in Shang-Chi 2, he'd definitely make for an exciting new villain in the MCU. Next up is Shiklah, a recent addition to Marvel Comics who could easily make her way into the MCU. She's a succubus princess from a monster kingdom, and her story took an interesting turn when Deadpool awoke her from an eternal slumber. The two struck up a relationship and even got married, though their marriage quickly fell apart when Shiklah grew tired of Deadpool's life as a hero. Shiklah also has ties to Werewolf by Night and eventually marries Dracula. With her many connections to different characters in the MCU, there are plenty of ways to introduce her into the franchise. And lastly, there's Frankenstein's monster. If the MCU continues with Halloween specials and wants to capture that classic gothic vibe, Frankenstein's monster would be a perfect fit. In the comics, there have been many versions of the character, and he's evolved beyond just being a typical monster. While it might surprise some fans that Frankenstein's monster exists in the comics, there are a number of ways he could be introduced into the MCU. He'd be a great addition after Werewolf by Night, potentially joining the Legion of Monsters or the Howling Commandos as a prominent member. Well, that's it. Which one are you most excited to see on the big screen? Do you think we'll get a Legion of Monsters team up soon? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates on all the upcoming Marvel goodness. We'll see you next time.